In case you haven't heard yet, the National Electrical Code has just come out with the latest edition, the 2026 edition. It came out in September of 2025 and was effective as of its release date and supersedes all previous editions. Now, what does this mean for you for arc flash hazards? It gets way more specific and a lot more broad as far as what equipment is mandatory to have arc flash hazard markings. Now, if you look at the NFPA 70E as your standard for electrical safety in the workplace, we know that this has been a requirement for many, many years. But the National Electrical Code has only mandated it previously for equipment at 1,000 amps or higher. The 2026 edition has made some major changes to 110.16, which we're going to cover in this video today. Let's dive into the code book itself, looking at the 2023 versus the 2026 changes. So in 110.16, the arc flash hazard warning in the 2023 National Electrical Code said electrical equipment such as switchboards, switchgear, enclosed panel boards, industrial control panels, meter socket enclosures, and motor control centers in other than dwelling units that are likely to require examination, adjustment, servicing, or maintenance while energized shall be field or factory marked to warn qualified persons of potential electrical arc flash hazards. Long sentence there. And of course, it should meet the requirements in 110.21b and shall be located as to be clearly visible to qualified persons before examination, adjustment, servicing, or maintenance of the equipment. In the 2023 edition, it specifies in that section that it'll be service and feeder supplied equipment rated 1,000 amps or more, and that the arc flash label shall be in accordance with industry practice, applicable industry practices, including the date the label was applied. So the label shall meet the requirements of 110.21b. Now, in the NEC 2023 edition, it still had the informational note below that telling you what the industry best practice standard was, the NFPA 70E, and then told you to go look at that for more details. So notice that it specifically said service equipment and feeder supplied equipment rated 1,000 amps or more. Now let's go look at the 2026 edition because the 2023 is out. We're going to focus on the 2026 edition now. In Article 110.16, the title had a slight change, arc flash hazard marking. And a lot of that verbiage is very similar to what we just read, but it also goes on to say that it'll need to contain the following information. And they give 4 points here, making it more prominent for you to recognize. So the first thing they point out is that it has to have the nominal system voltage, the arc flash boundary, the available incident energy or minimum required level of personal protective equipment, and the date the assessment was completed. So not just the date that it was applied, but the date that the assessment was completed. It has to have specific arc flash information, so no generic warning, there might be some hazards here, follow best practices. No, it has to have that calculated incident energy level or the minimum required PPE that's based on the hazard level that you're facing. No generic information, specific, detailed. What actually is this person going to be facing if they are exposed to those conductors or circuit parts? It does still, in the informational notes, point to the NFPA 70E for how to accomplish this, but it now more closely aligns in the code book with what the 70E has said for many, many editions. So it's great to see them expand this and clarify that generic labels on less than 1,000 amp service equipment, feeder equipment, is not acceptable. Although that was all that was called out previously, we know in the electrical safety industry that much lower amperage ratings can still have a significant arc flash hazard. So now it's required. Black and white right there in the 2026 National Electrical Code. No guesswork. You got to get it done. In the 2026 NEC, it does still call out that it needs to comply with the 110.21b section. So what does that say in the 2026 version? Well, for the field applied hazard markings, it says where caution, warning, or danger hazard markings, such as labels or signs, are required by this code, 110.16, the marking shall meet the following requirements: be of sufficient durability and using the effective words, colors, and symbols per the ANSI Z535 standard, and the marking shall be permanently fixed to the equipment or wiring method and shall not be handwritten. I have actually seen some arc flash labels out there that are generic and then you Sharpie in the information you think it should be. That's not acceptable anymore. There's also a requirement for it to be permanently affixed. So no removable tags, no just making a generic piece of paper that says arc flash hazard, go look at your reports for more details, nothing like that. We want this information permanently affixed, not easy to remove, an actual label applied to that equipment. So that's another specification that has been clarified here. No handwritten, no go reference other books to figure out your information, right there on the equipment. Easy for workers to access that information in a moment's notice. All they have to do is stop and read the labels. Now you're probably wondering how this applies to you and when you actually have to comply with the 2026 edition. Now, a lot of states have not yet recognized this edition, as we're still in 2025 at the date of this recording. However, I will say, since it was released in September of 2025 and supersedes all previous editions, the authority having jurisdiction in your area or at your facility could decide to adopt this right now. They could start enforcing it right now. A lot of states, if they are to adopt the latest edition, wait till the beginning of the year for that code release. So January 2026, for several states, for several of you, that's whenever you're going to have to be able to comply with these clarified arc flash hazard marking requirements. Again, in my opinion, looking at the history of our codes and standards and going to different meetings and reading through the different markups, this has been the intent for a long time. But no more loopholes, no more guesswork. It has been clarified in black and white. Now it's required for much more equipment and much more detailed. But what about OSHA? If you remember, recently they came out with an arc flash guidance document and webpage and a lot of wonderful resources and information that honestly they point to complying with this requirement before the 2026 code even was released. So I will say OSHA, your local, city and state authorities, and the NFPA are all kind of aligning here, and it's incredible to see because previously there's been some gray areas and discrepancies, but with the guidance documents, with the 70E requirements, and now with the actual National Electrical Code clarifying these requirements as well, there's a lot more continuity between the regulations, which actually makes it easier for you to comply with it. You don't have to juggle and balance different initiatives and wording to make everyone happy. So I'm actually really excited to see this. If you're struggling, if you're not sure how to get this done, especially if you know that your state's going to be adopting this as of January and you've only got a little time left, reach out. We'd be happy to help and figure out a game plan. A lot of times, if we can just get you started with the process and you show some significant effort and desire to comply with it, there's some grace given. I'm not from OSHA, so I can't make that guarantee, but I will say that that's been the case in many situations in the past. Show the initiative, show that you're working on it genuinely and that you care, and you'll be able to get this compliant before you ever have issues. If you have any questions or just want to dive into this code a little bit further, we have many engineers with years and years of experience and expertise that can really get into this topic with you. Please don't hesitate to reach out. We would be happy to help you in any way possible because our goal should be the same as yours. We want your workers to go home safely.